Welcome, friends. Another vlog from Faith and Play Stories. I'm Melinda Wenner Bradley, the Director of Communication and Training, and I am joined by my colleague, Elizabeth, who is going to introduce herself. And we're going to talk about an amazing idea that she has been piloting with Albuquerque Friends Meeting and some ideas around that. So, Elizabeth, share who you are.
Thank you for this invitation, Melinda. I'm Elizabeth Freyman. I live in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I am the children's program coordinator for Albuquerque Monthly Meeting. I also am shortly to be a newly minted Faith and Play Godly Play licensed trainer, which is very exciting. And people can find out more about the work that I do on my website, walkingcheerfully.org.
Great, thank you. I want to make sure I put that in the post with this recording, so I'll make sure I have that in there. So, Elizabeth, you shared with me about something you were doing. You know, it's been a Quaker tradition, so to speak, to do friendly eights for what, decades? I won't, maybe
Mm.
not centuries, but decades. And a while ago, when I had young children, I remember feeling like this feels a little outdated. Like Friendly Eights was really, in a way, kind of created for four couples to be together. And I know that for my meeting, we had a family with three children. So we were an eight, but it was our family plus another couple plus another individual. And it was really, really lovely. But at some point, we began to explore the idea that sometimes families actually want to be with each other. Was there some way to do it that children could be with another family with children? So when you described to me what you're going to share today, I felt like it was sort of the next, iteration in some ways of we want to be together and have fellowship and be in each other's homes. And this is another way. But there's another aspect here that I hope you'll describe, which is the need and the yearning for adults to better understand Quaker faith and practice. Um, and the idea of it being this experience being grounded in homes really is going back to the beginning for us as friends when we worshiped in homes with each other. So there's the teaser. Tell us more. Tell us how it started and what it looks like.
Yeah, yes. So I've been working in holding the position I have for Albuquerque Monthly Meetings since 2018. And, over the years, kind of people come and people go, but our community of families has been slowly building. And I would say, in times of political tension and kind of global tension, people often seek community. And so we have, over the last year and a half, 2 years, seen um, quite a few new families and families new to Quakerism join our community. And this fall, um, there was one mom in particular that I could just feel how hungry she was to know more and to learn more. She's a spiritual seeker, and she had gotten a little bit of information about Quakerism and had that kind of big yes that some of us do when we're like, oh, I think that might be what I am. And so she had offered to take me out to coffee a couple of times to just learn more. And so I was thinking, well, that's a lovely offer, and I wonder if there's something more that we could do here, because that's how my brain works. And a couple weeks after that initial invitation, I had another parent who has been attending with her two children she had been attending for about a year when we had this conversation. And she came to me and she said, I feel like my kids are learning things about Quakerism that I should really know too. And she had attended Quakerism 101 and enjoyed reading about kind of the early roots of Quakerism through George Fox's journal and John Woolman's journal. But what she felt like she was missing was the application piece. She felt like her children were learning how to be Quaker in a way that she really hadn't yet. And so she and I actually really sat down and thought through like, well, how could we do this? There was another piece that I don't think I've mentioned to you that her children, the mom with two kids who'd been attending for a little over a year, her children were coming home and singing songs that we sing during the course of our first day school time together. And she didn't know them, and she wanted to be able to sing along with her children. So we sketched out this idea that we would open it up to the wider community of families, and we would meet at each other's homes once a month. And to start, and we would meet kind of earlier in the day on a Saturday, so like 4 o'clock, because mostly the people who were expressing an interest in this had pretty young children. So they wanted to be done by 6 and have their regular bedtime routines available to them. So we decided we would meet once a month at one another's homes, rotating through each other's homes. And I would do a mini first day school lesson. So we sit down together. I light a candle. I say the candle blessing that I open with every first day school. And then we would sing a couple of songs and I would tell a story. And so far, all of the stories have been from Faith and Play. And then afterward, we would eat a meal together. And it's been really sweet. It's been a small community, but it's been a really consistent community of families. The stories I started with, the Faith and Play story of George Fox. And then I've told Four Doors to Meeting for Worship, one of the new Faith and Play stories. I've told a story about the testimonies and a story about meeting for worship with attention to business, because I was really hearing that application piece and that need for how do I understand better what Quaker practice looks like. I think a lot of people, when they're kind of researching Quakerism, they learn a lot about the values, the testimonies, but the how we Quaker can be a little bit of a more challenging access point, I think. Um, yeah, yeah. So it's been really sweet and really nice to visit one another in our homes. The kids get excited to see, the spaces that these other children live in and their toys and their pets. And we have learned a few things along the way. I'll say that too. So, the first time we did it, we didn't really have a plan for how we would, um, because there was also this yearning for, yes, the Faith and Play or Godly Play story, but also for some more kind of intellectualized content. And so we didn't really have a plan for how we would transition and kind of release the children to go play and let the adults continue kind of a more adult level discussion of the topic that I had brought. So the first time we did it, there was this moment during the wondering where it became an adult asked like a question that could be, and I'm trying to think of what it was. I think it might have been about kind of a topic in George Fox's journal or something, but really like a verifiable question. And that was the moment for me where I named, oh, we're moving from wondering into discussion. And so maybe this would be a good time to let the kids, go play and we can sit together and continue our discussion. And, so since that first time, we have tried to have some older kids there too, who could kind of steward the children, while the adults stay and have more of a discussion when that pivot point comes, when we transition from wondering to discussing. So.
Awesome. Thank you for describing that so beautifully. You answered a couple of the questions I wanted to ask. One was which stories you had been doing this with. And then I was going to ask about wondering together with an intentionally intergenerational mixed age group, but is also it's your parents and your caregivers, it's families together. So I'm not surprised to hear that that transition point happened. I find
Mhm.
that, and I think you lifted something that's important to do, which is whether it's in a scenario like this, or I've often found it to be the case if I'm wondering with teens, with adolescents, in a middle school or high school group, or to say, it feels like we're leaving the wondering. Are we okay to leave the wondering? Because it feels like maybe there's a discussion we want to have. But in this case, you had to also figure out what you were then going to do so that you could make that transition for the adults and for the children to not to have their own space after that. Um, so those were the two things I wanted to ask about were the choice of story. What kind of and the wondering, what kind of have you gotten any feedback from families? Have people shared what their experience of this has been like and how it has fed them in any way?
Um, yeah, actually, there's another thing that we do here in Albuquerque, that we call Parents' Night In, where we
Mm,
have elders from the community, um, cook and serve dinner to parents,
mm,
in one space, while other elders from the community watch the children and play, and have dinner with the children in another space. And we always start in the parent space with worship sharing. And we were talking about community. And one of the parents who's participated, really loyally in these, we called them family ed evenings, shared that it was a really, just a really cozy entry point for her.
mm,
And I would say in the wondering too, we really are able to get into, what draws people to this community. And the Four Doors, to Meeting for Worship was a really interesting, wondering, because
mm,
as we, wondered about the different aspects of the story and the different doors, families were, I think, more had the language, which is part of what we're doing when we use these stories. We're giving people an entry point to our language system too. And I think that they had the language then to articulate why each piece of that cycle felt so valuable, and why when one piece of the cycle, like not making it to meeting for worship one week, why that, um, was so felt by them, why it was noticeable when one piece of the cycle was missing, during the way we move through our week. So that was, yeah, I would say those two experiences, um, really kind of reinforced for me what this is providing.
mm, mm. Thank you. What rises for me listening to you is, first of all, you are really illustrating the way that faith and play stories are not just for all ages, but can be a support for newcomers.
Mm.
And, we heard very specifically about the Meeting for Business story in another recording that was about how a program at a meeting uses that story as part of the many materials they use for newcomers. But this is a different context, but again, it's illustrating the way in which the stories are for all of us and can do that. It also makes me wonder about adding a wondering question with specifically four doors to Meeting for Worship about, I wonder if we could take out any of the doors and still have everything we need. You mentioned not going to worship, but what if we weren't doing the door before? What if we did nothing for the door before? Or what if we went out into the world and didn't continue to be friends in the ways we can? So that's interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure when I got that response was I did say, one of the more typical, like, I wonder if there's any part of this story
Right.
we could take away and still have all the story we need. And so having a parent identify in that moment, like, yeah, when I don't go to worship, I'm
Mm,
really recognizing why then the rest of the week feels a little bit off.
yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was really lovely.
Yeah. 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 Um, well, I just want to lift up again the way in which this is intergenerational, and which is something we've talked about with Faith and Play in other places, in the wonderful interview with Ann Nunes. In Cincinnati about how they're doing intergenerational worship, like in their Sunday morning, worship. But this is taking it kind of back to homes and back to a place where not only did friends worship in homes in our early history, but family worship was an important part of how children learned how to Quaker, as you say. And so
Mm.
it's really bringing people together to do that. Beautiful. Do you want to say a little bit about what songs you choose to sing? You sing in your children's program at meeting, but then you're singing a couple songs at the start of this dinner experience as well.
Yes, sure. So we always sing Magic Penny
Mm,
because it's just a favorite from our community here. And if kids are going to be singing a song at home, it's Magic Penny is probably in that repertoire, right?
mhm,
And so I just wanted to make sure all the parents had the opportunity to learn it. And then I try to pick a second song that has something to do with the topic. So, of course, when I told the story about George Fox, we sang the George Fox song and his shaggy, shaggy locks. And when we did Four Doors, I'm pretty sure it's called Special Silence.
mhm,
So we at Albuquerque Monthly Meeting, we use what we call the Blue Book, Songs of the Spirit,
mhm.
which is tricky because it's out of print.
Oh,
um,
wow.
but yeah, so and Simple Gifts, I'm pretty sure was our second song when I did this story about the testimonies. So yeah, so I just try to pick one that we sing often enough that the kids will be familiar with it. So I'm not the only one singing. I don't have the most um accurate singing voice, but I have a very enthusiastic singing voice. And yeah, and somewhat tied to what we'll be talking about that evening.
Wonderful. I will include a link to the QREC resource of like kind of like songs every Quaker kid should know. That is certainly a resource for home as well as camp and meeting. So thank you for lifting that up. I do want to share that there is another way to do. It's remarkable how similar. I was asked by a meeting in my quarter to do something similar this summer. So just to have said it for folks to know a different way to do it, if being in homes is a challenge in any way. Um, they also approached me because of a feeling that some of the newer members. Um, you know, we're still yearning to know more about what it is we're doing in terms of faith and practice. And so we are doing it on Sunday morning before worship, but really kind of it's sort of embedded around worship. So, arriving, having a story and wondering intergenerationally with families, and I think anyone else who's interested in coming from the adult community, we're going to have the story and wonder together, and then the children will go play. So, the thing you found. So the children will go play, and the adults will stay for another 15 or 20 minutes of conversation, that transition to conversation around the topic. And then from there, go into worship, and then have fellowship afterward. So I'm going to do Listening for God in June, Four Doors to Meeting for Worship in July, and Meeting for Business in August. And then we'll kind of take it from there in the fall. But thank you so much for sharing. It's really special that you're in each other's homes, and
Hmm.
um, to know each other in that way. And, I think you're right, for children to see each other's homes and meet each other's pets and get to play together is a really grounding experience.
Hmm. Yeah.
Would you close our time here? And I'm going to actually also make sure I put it in print in this post. But would you close by sharing with us the candle blessing that you do at the beginning before stories?
Sure. Let me just turn around and
Yes.
grab
It's been
a.
so nice to see your story shelves behind you.
So let's see. There we go. You can kind of see that. So I do, as part of our first day school every week, offer to allow a child, first grade or older, to light the candle for us, because so much spiritual practice combines candle lighting that I think I see it as part of my responsibility to teach them how to safely light a candle. So we always have a little box of matches, and we sing, "We can light a candle, God can light the stars. All of us are shining right from where we are. Blessings on our day and on each other, friends." And then when we get ready to go upstairs, oh, well, my snifter is away, but then we put it out and we say the little godly play stanza of "The light was in one place and now it's spread everywhere and it can go with you without throughout your week."
Mm, it's changed, but it still goes everywhere.
That's right.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. Thank you for sharing this story of the work that you're doing with your meeting. I hope it will inspire others to try the same.
You're so welcome.
Great. Thank you.